We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And we are finishing both the Falcon and the Winter Soldier replay today and our replay series as a whole as it relates to the MCU proper, because after today we will have caught up to where we officially started the podcast. So since you all have been around here for a hot minute, I won't take much longer on the intro other than to say, if you haven't watched the finale of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, highly recommend that you do before diving into this episode, because then everything will be fresher as we discuss it. With all that being said, Katie, take it away.
I remember really liking this finale, and I still think I do.
Yes.
And I say I think because as I was watching it, I felt like it checked all the right boxes for me when it comes to a finale. And also, it checked the boxes of the series itself for finishing it up, which is what I also really, really appreciate, because I don't think a lot of shows check all the boxes in either of those departments. And I can finally get behind one that does. And by finally, I mean, this was the second show that came out. But if you really think about like the roster at this point, this one is still one that I think did a finale actually quite well.
Yeah, I think it was kind of the perfect balance of tying up the storylines that were not going to move past this show, but yet setting up the characters for whatever was next. We know where John's going. We know where Sam's going. We know where Bucky's going. All those things. These are three big characters that are going to come out of this show and into other properties. It gave us a great ending for Isaiah and gave him the opportunity to then make an appearance in Sam's movie. So I think overall, it did a really good job of kind of balancing both leaving the door open, but then not leaving a ton of loose threads other than Sharon, which I'm sure we'll talk about, that really have no chance of being picked up. And to their credit, they had no idea, I'm sure, at the time that Sharon was going to be one of those lost end credits, looking at the king of lost credits, Mordo, that is never ever going to be referenced again, because it was probably ideated that she was going to be a part of Cap 4. We've sat on that soapbox. We know she should have been. I'm not saying she would have been, but if we were, gonna do a really good job of going from one to the other, she should have been. She was perfectly set up, the perfect Captain America antagonist, but unfortunately, the shared universe got in the way. Other than that, it did a good job of doing, to your point, what it needed to do.
I actually think we should start by addressing Sharon, because she's kind of the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Mainly because, to your point, this is all in retrospect, of course. This is all with having had just about 5 years now of content that's come out since this, and having Cat 4 come out and things like that. And even the Thunderbolts, even having the Thunderbolts come out and where the three probably most relevant characters to this show came out of and where they went. My issue is to your point, it's a shared universe. They set this up the way they set this up, and it made sense in the show. And now we sat here and we have this loose trail, this loose end that's just going to die on the vine. And it bothers me because, as you said as well, she was set up to be a very good Captain America villain.
The betrayal would have been incredible. That storyline, would have been so good.
I mean, it's the betrayal on top of the fact it's a villain of his own making. And
Yeah.
I think where we kind of draw a lot of the lines when we talk about the best villains versus the not so good villains versus the ones that are just kind of like, meh, they told the
Why?
story, they did their job. Yeah, like it's like, okay. I think a lot of where we draw that line comes from where is the villain's origin coming from and what is the reason that they are doing what they're doing. And the strongest ones are always tied to either something that's sympathetic or to the protagonist / hero of whoever, that it's their creation
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form. Now, this one would have been amazing.
Yes.
And for the type of movies that Captain America has always had, this one would have really done it. I mean, guys, we met her in The Winter Soldier.
Mhm.
Her and Sam came in the exact same movie.
Yep.
Like, they go hand in hand, and he is literally the one who gets her pardoned.
Yep.
So it's extremely aggravating to me that, and some of this is just because Cap 4 sucked so bad.
The writing was literally, I mean, it's bad.
It's bad.
I don't want to be all hyperbolic on it, but it's bad.
It's bad.
It's not. It's two different movies, and it's so clearly two different visions, and And I feel bad because I wanted a great Captain America movie for Sam, and I wanted that so bad, and the writing let him down so hard.
It did.
Especially coming off of this show.
Exactly. And it has nothing to do with Sam and has nothing to do as him as Captain America, but it has everything to do with the fact that they wanted to make a Hulk sequel and just shoved it into a Captain America movie for some very odd reason.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you laughed in this show's face,
Yes.
first and foremost.
Yes.
And second, you laughed in the fans' faces.
Yes.
Personally, like, let's be real. And you laughed in Anthony Mackie's face.
Yes.
I just, you knew you had this guy. And the fact of the matter is this entire show is based off of how difficult it is for a black man to feel comfortable and truly feel like he can represent being Captain America and the struggle he has taking on that shield. And then you're like, tee hee hee, the next movie, the Hulk. And it's like, oh my God, what? Like, imagine the story that could have been told when you highlight that Sam, your Captain America, who already is trying so much harder than his predecessor because he is not blonde hair with blue eyes the same way. He says it, right? He says it in the show. He's already trying so much harder to get people's approval of him. And his first mistake is letting the power broker back and getting pardoned by the U.S. government. And she gets her job back by the U.S. government.
The story writes itself. It's like
it's right there.
They handed the writers of Cap 4, the writers of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, handed the writers of Cap 4, and I don't know if it was I'm assuming it was a different set of writers, because I would hate to think that the people who wrote this masterpiece of a show would then go on to write Cap 4, and I know it went through 18 different reshoots and whatever, but would allow that to be put out after they made this show. But the writers of this show handed the writers of Captain America 4 a gorgeous, meaty, nuanced plot on a silver platter. And the writers of Cap 4 spit in it and said, actually, JK, the Red Hulk and the leader. Which, don't get me wrong, characters I'm glad we have.
Yeah.
But they were totally wrong for this film. It completely changes tone from the prior Captain America films. And that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but it was for the worse. And I think we would have seen with the Power Broker similar tone in that it would have been a political thriller. That is where the Captain America character has always played in the MCU. Look at Winter Soldier. Look at Civil War. That's all about government secrets and all of those things. And to add into that, Sam and his personal challenges in becoming Captain America that we saw in this show, that would have just added another layer of nuance to some of these storylines. And yet you said, no, actually, let's not do that for some unknown reason.
Well, and let's be real here now. As I said, it's been 5 years. And we're going into Doomsday and we're going into Secret Wars. And then right after that, and I'm not saying the Captain America story is going to necessarily end. I'm not saying that. But right after that, we go into the Mutant Saga. And for the first time, Captain America is probably not going to really be the man because we're worried about the mutants, which makes sense. And now it's like, well, will this ever be utilized? Even in a Cap 5? Probably not.
Which I think is a detriment.
Well, yeah, and if anything at this point, if they continue the New Avengers / Thunderbolts, I could see her playing there. Because that's the only other opportunity at this point.
Yeah.
Is maybe playing in with that team who already are in their gray area, and now she could be a villain there. And that's really the only opportunity because, I mean, you have John and Bucky there, and I think you washed too much on the Cap 4 one that I just don't think for Cap specifically it could make sense anymore. The Thunderbolts, I could maybe still find a way to argue bringing her into.
Yeah, unless they don't continue to keep the Thunderbolts / New Avengers and the Avengers led by Sam as two separate entities. If they come together, it could be like a group effort. I just would hate to waste an Avengers movie on the Power Broker. Like, those are typically much larger scale. I mean, you look at Ultron, you look at Loki's invasion, obviously Thanos, like Doom. Like, these are all threats that make the Power Broker, while she is obviously powerful in her own right, it's just a very different, they're playing in very different fields here, and she just does not feel like an Avengers level threat to me. Like, that is a singular hero's, she's perfectly written for a singular hero story.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I'm just thinking like the other opportunity at this point, if we're going to go down it, I would find it weird now that we go in with Cap 5, if that is what they decide to do. Like, I would have to, I don't know.
I think all in all, they've missed the boat is basically like the big note here.
Yes. Yeah. The opportunity's gone. I'm just kind of trying to hope that it's still maybe there.
I know. And Emily Van Camp she's really good in the role, both before she became the Power Broker and after. She's been consistently good.
But I'm also so sick and tired. Okay, like, I know we always all joke around about how much we don't actually like Sharon. Okay, period, the end. But like, she's actually a really interesting character. Like, she's actually important. And I know that people were very excited when she was introduced. So it's so disappointing to me that they have just consistently pushed her to the side from being Steve's love interest. They're pushing her aside from this villain arc they were putting her on, a much understood villain arc too.
Yeah.
Like a well-written villain arc, an understandable villain arc. And we don't have a lot of good female villains sometimes.
Agreed.
Like, let's be real. So she would have been a really good one. And it's just so aggravating because, like, what a waste of the character. And to your point of Emily, who is an amazing actress and who was pulling off both ends of this character so far.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking back to the moment she kills Carly, right? Like, she plays that so well. Sharon does from a strategic standpoint, but then the way that Emily is so, you can look at it with hindsight's 2020 and say, oh, like, she's definitely playing both sides here. But if you're not looking at it, going in and knowing that, then you're just like absolutely shocked by that, right? Like, she is playing that kind of, hardened Sharon card, but yet still on the good side so well. And then she does that flip when she's with Carly and she is utterly menacing. And you're like, where did this come from? It's a really well done performance by Emily.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And that's what I think is also very aggravating, is that characters kind of been wasted twice.
Yes.
In two different ways. And I mean, quite frankly, if I was Emily, I would have no interest in coming back regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I do think we can move on to a different character. I want to save our two title characters for last, and so we'll work our way up. So let's talk about John. John, man, he does the exact flip of what he's done the entire season. So you start out and you're like, this guy's not so bad. And then he devolves into a total jerk.
He's actually the worst.
Yeah. And then you start this episode and you're like, oh my God, picking up where we left off. You're unhinged.
Yes.
And then at the end, you see him have his redemption moment, right? He has that moment where he is putting down the idea of getting back at Carly. And instead of going after the vengeance, he saves the people. And that right there is the exact pivot point where John begins an upward trajectory from where he's been spiraling thus far in the show.
Yeah. You know, he is the one character that I think gives me the most whiplash
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
In like the shortest amount of time, too.
Yeah.
You really struggle with him. And then he comes out of the gate in the Thunderbolts. He does the same thing. You like don't like him. You're like, you're kind of sucky. And then by the end, you're like, yeah, you're kind of fine.
Like, I begrudgingly like you. It's
like,
annoying.
I begrudgingly like you. Yes. And it's so hard with him. It really is. But I do like that you pointed out that moment with Carly because it gave him the choice to redo that moment in the square.
Yeah.
And he actually picked the right decision.
Yeah.
Which I do respect that he actually, sat there and learned from the mistake and was like, I could let these people die. I could also save them.
Yeah.
And the soldier in me, regardless of whatever my feelings are, knows the right decision is to save the people.
Yeah.
And so I do appreciate that because I think, and actually I don't remember this, which I actually am glad we did rewatch it because I think it actually gives more to his relationship with Bucky. The two of them have a good kind of like back and forth a little throughout the battle. And in like a not buddy way, but almost in the same way him and Sam do at the start. And it's actually really nice. I didn't remember that from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but it does kind of really lend itself a little better to me to the relationship they end up having in the Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really remember their relationship evolving further than the pure just pretty much I hate you that Bucky felt towards him. But in these moments you could see those cracks kind of forming of like I guess you're here and you're like not the worst. And I'll like fight bad people with you. And like that to me is what helps. Like now that I saw that, I'm like, oh, that bridges so nicely into what we actually see in the Thunderbolts now. And also like, we can't forget Bucky's the one who's like, sorry, your wife left you. Like he knows that stuff. So I think the two of them also probably stay in some degree of contact,
Yeah, at the very least, it kind of lays that foundation for them being able to work together because they've done it before. And I think you're right. Like, we talked about this episode being a good ramp for a lot of these characters, and not just individually, but how they're relating to one another. And I think Bucky and John are a good example of that because they now have a less antagonistic relationship that they can then build upon and do build upon in the Thunderbolts. And I think the last thing that I'll say that is, it makes me sad for John. And this was something that I kind of forgot. But when he is trying on the US agent suit and he's with Valentina and his wife, and you see how happy he is to be like, oh, I'm back. And you see how happy his wife is for him, and they are still very much a unit. And then you watch that with the hindsight of having seen the Thunderbolts, and it's like, he seemed to have been on the upswing. But I think with John and the PTSD that we talked about with him before, mental health is not a linear path, right? So even though he is on the upswing at the end of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as we see, he goes on another downswing. He has more challenges. He's unable to be there for his child and probably his wife as well. And then, has some real challenges in keeping his marriage together and is unable to do so. So it was actually kind of sad to see that like things were looking up for John. And then we see that actually, no, they were looking up right in this exact moment, but they're actually going to get significantly worse still for you before they get better.
Yeah, it doesn't get better for John. And now, mind you, they haven't had their baby yet, to my knowledge. Was she pregnant in this show?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so either.
If she was, they didn't make a big deal out of it.
They didn't say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they haven't even had the baby yet. And obviously they're still together through that. That adds another stressor on top of the situation. So, yes, it gets so much worse before it gets better for John. And obviously, John of all people becomes an Avenger. Crazy. Like anything's possible in this
Wild.
universe. Anything's possible in this universe. I cannot believe the man who defaces the Captain America shield, essentially is the biggest sign of disrespect to the Captain America mantle and to who Steve is as a person, one of the leaders of the OG Avengers.
Yeah.
And he manages to become an Avenger. And you know what? If that's not inspirational to all y'all out there, that you could be the worst and still turn your life around, then I don't know what is, because John really does he is the epitome of, I'm a horrible person, but I can figure it out eventually and everybody will like me. And even the fans did it. Let's be real. A lot of the fans have done their 180 as well.
Yeah. And I think, though, part of that is he got, and I don't want to justify anything for John, because John, in those middle episodes, he's really awful. But I think that, he's not, I think he got caught up in a lot of it. And I think it played and it pulled out some of his worst tendencies, and the worst version of himself came out and was on display in this show.
Yeah.
That being said, he is a really good poster child of like the idea of your mistakes don't define you. He didn't make a private mistake. He made an extremely public mistake. You saw people throwing things at him when he went in for his sentencing in the government building. He went from the guy who everybody wanted to talk to and who everybody wanted their autograph to being hated and considered vile and all those things. But yet, to your point, he's able to turn that around. So I think, as much as John represents veterans and soldiers and PTSD and some of those conversations, I think in a lot of ways he also represents the idea of just being able to overcome your worst mistakes, being able to forgive yourself for those mistakes and not letting them define you, so that you can move forward and be something that you can find yourself being proud of again, and being proud of yourself, after you do the work.
Yeah. And it is kind of surprising because John of all people, like after the things we've witnessed.
I know.
But he does. He puts in the work. And like I said, even at the beginning of the Thunderbolts, you're kind of like, God, here he is. I know. I'm like, oh, I still remember his entrance scene. And I'm just like, oh my God, he doesn't get better. I was like, I can't do this. But then you know what? I think maybe it's when Bucky puts him in his place, and then he kind of does a little bit of a turnaround, and I'm like, okay, you're not too bad.
Yeah.
Speaking of Bucky, I want to get to him.
Yeah.
Because he's actually the only character, and maybe this is because I'm just way too deep into the lore, but he's actually the only character, in my opinion, who actually doesn't really, where his ending here doesn't really make sense to where we pick up the next part of his story.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because I think what you're referencing is the fact that the next time we see him on screen, he's a congressman.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this Bucky just finished his amends and is learning how to live his life as a normal person, yet he goes and chooses to go be in Congress. So there is kind of a disconnect. I mean, look, there's a lot of disconnect, I think, between what the Falcon and the Winter Soldier set up and Cap 4. We talked, and a lot of it has to do with the villain. We talked about that at the beginning of the episode. But I think, to your point, Bucky is another huge piece of that, because there's a chunk of time where this man decides to be a congressman, or to run. He decides to run. So how did we get here? Why did we get here? What was the thought process? Bucky is such a cerebral character in the sense that, like, he has so much going on with all of his trauma and all the things he's working towards, that making those big leaps with a character like him doesn't work. You need to see him kind of do all of that work, because he has come so far in so many different ways, from where he started to being with Hydra to even just recovering as part of this show. And then that's a huge leap to go be in Congress. Just gigantic.
I agree, because we don't really see those aspirations played out anywhere or even hinted at.
Right.
And I think that's where I struggle a little bit. I guess because I hadn't seen this show again, probably really since it came out, I really didn't think too much about it. I do remember texting my one friend who's also a big Bucky fan, and we both were like, when we found out he was a congressman, we were like, "Oh, that's weird." Like, we both just kind of were like, "I'm glad that you acknowledge, like, you thought that on your own, and I thought that on my own, and we are both coming together to be like, yeah, we both thought that was a little strange, but like, work, like whatever. He did his thing." But I do think now that I've seen the ending of this show, and this final episode, I think really does showcase him as a hero.
Yeah.
I think we don't get to see that, unfortunately, in Infinity War and Endgame. There's a lot going on there. Let's not be like, I'm not going to muddy the water and say that like he had his moments. But I will sit there and say it's kind of funny because they just like give him a gun in Infinity War and Endgame and they're like, go off. And it's kind of interesting that that's how they decide to showcase him there. And then obviously in the show, they really show him as a soldier
Yeah.
and doing the things that, Steve's Captain America would have done.
Yeah.
And so I do think like the final battle, was a great depiction of him kind of learning to fight again without being scared of the programming that he's still kind of, I think, unsure is or isn't there. And I think, we've seen that growth throughout. And to your point, he's making his amends and he's doing it. And then we weirdly have him become a member of Congress. And I just think it's just weird. Him becoming the leader of the Thunderbolts or one of the leaders of the Thunderbolts, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I see that trajectory like works.
Yeah.
The congressman line for me didn't, especially seeing where we were with this show. Where we were with this show completely, to me, sets up him being the one who forms the Thunderbolts.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think one of the things that I wrote down when I was watching the episode was you see this moment when Bucky gets the hostages out of the burning car truck thing.
Yeah.
And one of the hostages stops, turns around, and says to him, "Thank you for saving us."
Yes.
And Bucky just has this moment where you see that kind of sink in because, to your point, he was a hero in Wakanda. He was a hero at the Avengers campus in upstate New York in Endgame. He fought in those battles. Of course he did. But he wasn't there with the people. I should say the people who were affected were not there. You weren't seeing, first of all, he was dusted at the end of Infinity War, but then even in Endgame, you weren't seeing all of the people coming back because they weren't coming back to Avengers Campus. So he really hasn't had the opportunity to really be face to face with the people he's saving. And so, I think for that moment is so powerful for him because every other time he's really been face to face with people that he remembers, they are his future victims. They are afraid of him. And instead of getting fear, he's getting gratitude. And I have to think that that is such a healing moment for him to reframe what he is truly capable of. He's not just capable of using violence to hurt people, he is also capable of using violence and his strength and the training that he got to actually help people. And I think that reframing is super important for him as he then, to your point, goes on to be a really important member of the Thunderbolts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do think overall, besides the congressman part, I think this episode really does. I mean, the show as a whole really does show such a insane amount of growth for him. He's had a lot of growth over the time he's obviously been in the MCU. I mean, we're introduced to him. I mean, he's kind of had the whole trajectory. Let's be real. When we first meet him, he's the bestie, but also he's the one, right? Steve's his little like small best friend who just is like barely alive half the time with all the health conditions he has. And then, he kind of becomes the sidekick and then he becomes the villain. And then, just all these things. He kind of wears a lot of hats. And as you kind of said, even in the show and in this last episode, he really gets to, for the first time, I think, return back to that feeling that he had when he was kind of in the war.
Yeah.
Of like doing the right thing and knowing you are saving people and helping people and you're taking out the bad guys. Like, I think that's a moment of like, he finally completed that trajectory, that arc, that circle that he's been on and he's had to ride every part of it. He finally has returned back to being the good guy and fighting on the right side. And I think being appreciated. I mean, even I know something that like gets pointed out a lot, especially in the Bucky circles, are like when he walks into the GRC, he's greeted and somebody is like Sergeant Barnes,
Yeah.
and they let him through. And I think there's so much that always gets talked about because one, it's the respect of him just in general, but it's the respect to who he's always been.
Yeah.
He is a sergeant. He did serve in World War II. You know, yes, his next 70 to 80 years were crazy. You know, and there's definitely a lot that has happened in that time frame and a lot of bad things that he was forced to do, but it was respect to who he was before, and that people are acknowledging him as that person and not as the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, and I think it's also a nod to who he is now. Like I
Yeah.
think there's this sense that he has come full circle and returned to that version of himself, and that's the version that he's presenting to the world now, not, to your point, the one who is under the mind control, is doing all of the things, that he was forced to do under Hydra. But all that being said, I think the next big thing that we want to talk about is our main man Sam, our guy who dons the Captain America mantle. And let me tell you, his suit, I know they change it up a little in Cap 4, and I think the Cap 4 suit is also good. But this suit is straight out of the comics. Like,
Yeah.
if you were to pull a panel of
I had a shirt that had this exact suit on it.
yeah, if you were to pull that panel, like any panel from Sam as Captain America, I mean, it is literally like they brought it out of the page. It is, in terms of comic accuracy, I know we talked, actually, one of the big things that phases 4 through 6 has actually done really well. Narrative, not so much, but the costuming in this saga has been incredible.
100%.
And even within a very stacked cast of incredible costumes, Sam's has to be, in this show in particular, has to be one of the best. I would say top 3, hands down. I mean, it is just beautiful. It's not only incredible to see him take on the mantle, which I know we'll dive into a little bit more, but I just want to say, from a purely visual standpoint, like, his suit in this last episode is 10 out of 10, no notes.
Yeah, I mean, when he crashes through that window and like that's his moment.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a pause, right? Like the cinematic pause of like take it all in. It is worth taking in.
Yes.
Like, I think this has never not been discussion since really WandaVision. I mean, especially with Wanda's suit, and I know there were people who complained a little bit, but like that it wasn't the way they would have wanted it per se. Obviously, that was Lizzie's request, that she wanted it to be less revealing than the Scarlet Witch's typical suits, which we all know what those look like. So I totally understand. I totally get it. She's also had pretty revealing, just like typical. She hasn't really been wearing suits, but clothing in general before. So she did ask for that. I thought it looked great. Still very accurate to a lot of like the comic outfits she's had. Obviously, we got a nod to the OG with the Halloween episode.
Yeah.
But then, this one literally comes crashing through the window.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy crap.
Yeah. They ripped Sam out of the comics.
Yeah. It really is quite a nod to the comics itself. And I just have to applaud to everybody who works on costuming, because this is obviously, now as we're watching it back as a replay, but this was the second piece of content we got.
Yeah.
And all this did was continue the trajectory that we are now seeing 5 years later of very accurate suiting.
Yeah.
And just really taking the time out to make sure that it looks right for these characters. And it does. I mean, he looks amazing in it. It was extremely cool seeing his fight sequences with him in the suit, no longer in the Falcon suit. Because here's the other thing. The Falcon suit, I believe in the Winter Soldier, he really isn't wearing much of a suit, more than it's just the actual wings and like he has his glasses on and stuff. Obviously, that does evolve. Even at the beginning of the show, we see he has kind of like a very specific jacket he wears and things of that nature. But like in the Winter Soldier at first, this man is like in a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Like he's not, he is literally just like flying around in a t-shirt. So, we saw all of that, but then to see him now in the white with all, like, it is an amazing feat what they went through to make sure that this looked as good as it did.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about like what a moment to be a comic book fan. When something like this happens, you gotta just like, you have to get chills.
Yeah.
To watch something, crossover mediums and be translated so perfectly in that way is just, I could like stare at Sam in this episode. Like, I'm so glad because he's not wearing anything else the entire episode.
No.
Man never changes. And so, like, I could just stare at Sam in this episode for the rest of my life and be like, you know what? This is top tier costuming and life is good. But you mentioned that Sam was kicking butt in this episode. He really was. I think we got to see not only his fighting skills, but also, again, him in the wings. And I love watching Sam in the wings. I actually thought that the CGI held up pretty well.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that we had been really very critical of in this saga is some of the CGI has just been really bad. And it's not consistent. It's just some pieces you look at and you're like, this is a noodle. This is not a person. Sam looked great like the whole time.
I think they do these types of CGI very well though.
Yeah.
Like, and they always have, even with a lot of like, I actually just recently, I might have mentioned this on the last episode. I just recently rewatched The Winter Soldier, and not that that's shocking to literally anybody.
Hey, it was on while I was at the gym the other day, and I was texting Katie. I was like, "Hey, Winter Soldier on my like Stairmaster or the Stairmaster
It's
ahead
on
of me."
often at that Planet Fitness, because when I also used to go to that Planet Fitness, it used to be on a
Well,
lot.
FX has the different movies on all the time. It's just like, which one's gonna be on when I'm on today?
Yeah, literally. But like, I just recently rewatched it, and I remember even thinking like, yeah, this stuff held up pretty good too.
Yeah.
But it's because a lot of it is not like, you're not doing some of the things that you're doing in a Doctor Strange, right? Like,
yeah.
you aren't in a mirror dimension. We're blowing things up. We're flying
But I honestly
around.
think the mirror dimension has never been like, I'm thinking of like, oh my gosh, what was
Moon
it?
Knight.
It was Moon Knight. I
Knight.
mean, and they weren't even doing anything crazy. Like that seemed, I think it was like
No,
the
they
truck.
just like,
They were
it
hanging
was
out of
the
a truck.
It was,
it was like,
it was just that whole truck scene.
You can get Sam so perfectly when he is like flying, but you can't do a man hanging out of a truck. Like what world is this? That's what I mean. Like I wasn't sure how it was gonna look. I mean, the first episode when we see him in the wings, he looks great. You know, no complaints there. But then I was glad to see that all the way through it looked really good and everything, you know, held up really nicely, because I think overall this is one of the higher quality shows that they've put out. And so it was nice to like confirm like all the way through in all these different aspects, narrative, character, effects, suiting, all of it. It's like, okay, good. They checked the box on like all of these different things.
Yeah. Yeah. He looked great. And I mean, you know, here's the thing too with Sam. We saw in episode 5 really the build up to him taking on the mantle.
Yeah.
And I think the thing about Sam, which is what I think Steve appreciated so much, was he's always going to do the right thing. He is that kind of person.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's what Steve saw in him and appreciated in him. And I think he never, to those who, again, I love Bucky. I know he takes up the mantle, but like to those who are like, it should have been Bucky. Quite frankly, Steve knew Bucky was not in a place to take on that mantle.
Yeah.
Because Bucky did not trust himself to do the right thing. Bucky did not trust that his programming would be gone forever and actually permanently disappear. He did not think that would happen. And Steve was not going to put that pressure on him. Period. The end.
Yeah. I mean, I think in this episode, I mean, throughout the whole series, but again, I should say consistently, even through this episode, we see Sam's integrity shine through. I mean, Carly is out for blood in this episode. She is absolutely just, she's lost her grip on reality, and she is so unhinged. I mean, she's the level of unhinged John was. Like, it just took her longer to get there, but she is like not really in her right mind. But when you see her fight Sam, she keeps telling him, fight me, fight me, fight me, because she wants to have someone who's coming back at her in the same way, and he refuses to do it. He doesn't want to see her get hurt. That's his goal the whole time, is how can I stop what's happening, but yet make sure that she makes it out of here. She's a kid. And I think that is just one example of how Sam's integrity continues to shine through. And to your point, this is the reason why Steve chose him, is because he has that just innate sense of right and wrong in him that make him such a perfect person to take on this mantle. And you know, the other thing that I think Steve was really good at was speaking truth to power. He went against SHIELD, an organization that the woman he loved helped found. Well, Sam is out here basically going against the GRC and saying to them, are you making sure the right people are in the room when you are making these decisions? Think about the empathy. Think about the power that you have. I am standing here and I'm telling you that I can stand. He has this beautiful quote, and I didn't get the exact quote, but I'll paraphrase, where he says, the only power I have is that we can do better. Right? He's talking about it on so many fronts, not just as a Black Captain America, but in the fact of how we treat each other, how we look at each other, how we put each other in boxes. And the fact that he is having this conversation with these people who hold so much power, again, he's just so truly and at his very core embodying who Captain America is and what he stands for. And just by having that conversation is showing people this is exactly why I'm the right man to be Captain America.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I couldn't even say it better myself. I think he really, I mean, one, embodies who Captain America actually is, because this was a discussion we had throughout this episode or throughout the show. It's not just a suit and it's not just a shield.
Right.
And that's what the government didn't understand when they were like, here's John. Like,
right.
And this is no shade. This is actually truly no shade towards John, because at the end of the day, to his point, he did the work.
Yeah.
He is a great soldier, but that's not who Captain America is. Yeah, he happened to be a great soldier because he went through a science experiment and became one. But this goes back to the origins of this character, when he was selected because of the heart he had,
right,
because of the person he was at his very, very, very core. And that serum would not bring out bad qualities, because there weren't bad qualities to bring out. He was an all-around good human being, and he believed in helping people and helping his country and being the best version of himself. That is just who Steve was, and that's who Captain America became. And that is the mantle. And so, yes, I mean, to everything you said, that is who Sam is living up to. That is him. And you know what? I was so proud of him. Parasocial relationships. But I'm like so proud of him as he sits there and he goes, he's there with the shield and he's like, no, I am Captain America.
Yeah.
Screw all of you.
Yeah.
For one, making me feel like I should have given this shield up to begin with, that it wasn't mine, that I didn't deserve it, that it wasn't something that I could truly be, because he didn't feel that he could be. And two, because you tried to put another blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy in the suit, and look where it got you.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
I am Captain America, period, the end.
Yeah. I mean, his speech it was definitely leading up into this episode, and even leading up into this show as a whole, was something that I remembered distinctly from watching it. And it's something that it sticks with you beyond when you turn the TV off. And I think, you know, it's so great, to your point, to see Sam owning who he is, right? The idea that Captain America, what's the whole saying? Not a perfect soldier, but a good man. That is Sam to his core. He is the essence of Captain America. And I think what's cool then is, as much as we rag on, you know, the narrative around, or the narrative of, I should say, Captain America 4 and what that actual plot is, one thing that is consistent about it from this show is that Sam is a kick butt Captain America. He continues to show his empathy. He continues to show his integrity, his unwavering commitment to doing what is right. And I think, as much as that movie got wrong, one thing it got incredibly right is Sam Wilson and his character, which this show really allowed us to dive deeply into in a way that we had not before. And I'm so glad that we got to do that, because he's such a great character, and I'm excited to continue to see him moving forward, because he is a bomb Captain America and he's so good at it, and I'm excited for more.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it all even is encapsulated later on then too, when he's talking to Isaiah.
Yes.
Which I would actually have to argue to everybody listening to this is probably the most important scene.
Yes.
In 90% of the show. And I say 90% because the other 10% I think goes to his first conversation with Isaiah.
Yeah.
What we talked about during that episode, which I'm now currently blanking on the exact episode, I might have been 3 Or it might have been 5.
I think it was 4.
No, because 4 was when the shield thing happened.
Oh, you're right. It was 5 then. It was 5. It
Okay.
happened after the shield thing.
I was like, I know it's not 5, or I know it's not 4. But when he is having these conversations with Isaiah, I mean, a lot of Isaiah's pain comes from, I mean, one, what they did to him in general, but he was forced to be forgotten.
Yeah.
He literally explains that that a nurse who took pity on him helped essentially kill him off so that he didn't exist in the world, so he could escape and live after that. And I think we kind of come full circle because Sam is not looking for Isaiah's approval, but he does want to prove Isaiah wrong.
Yeah.
He wants to prove to Isaiah that the world can change and that it can be different, while still paying complete homage to the fact that the history books are the history books. History is written how it is written, and unfortunately, that can't be changed, including Isaiah's history. That can't be undone. And I think, I mean, we actually see this play out a little bit more as well in Cat 4 at the very beginning. But I think he does such a good job of truly showing Isaiah, I can respect that, but this is our country too, and I can represent it as well. And just because we have gone through the pain we have gone through, our people have gone through the pain that they've gone through over all these years, doesn't negate the fact that we helped build this country. And that doesn't make me lesser than anybody else here. And that doesn't make me any more or less, I should say, any less deserving to wear this mantle. If anything, it makes me more deserving to wear this mantle.
Yeah, I mean, Sam has this incredible line, and again, I don't know that I got it word for word, so a little bit of paraphrasing, but he says, and you alluded to this, we built and we fought, but we built and fought for this country, but no one can tell me that I can't fight for it. And, you know, you were saying the idea that like the history can't be rewritten, but I actually think that what Sam is trying to say to Isaiah is partially what you were saying. Like, yeah, I can acknowledge what came before me and the fact that we were never on equal footing despite our contributions, and move forward in a way that is going to acknowledge our contributions, and I can still fight for this country and be a part of it in that way. But I also think the second part of what he's saying to Isaiah is we can reshape that legacy, and I think that's why he goes to add a section for Isaiah in the Captain America exhibit, so that Isaiah's history is no longer lost, so that they can begin reshaping what that looks like and what it truly, you know, what was the actual reality, not just the history the way it was written, reshaping the legacy of Captain America. But then that is a metaphor for, of course, the United States as a whole, right? If you're acknowledging the contributions of people of color, in especially Isaiah in relation to Captain America, then what it's actually trying to get you to think about is the contributions of people of color throughout United States history that were downplayed when you read about it in the history books, to your point. So I think there's a lot in that conversation about legacy and about what it means to be American and how that is changing, and how hopefully in the future that will evolve to be more inclusive of everyone and not just be written of the perspective, you know, of the white people who wrote that history.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very powerful last 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And to your point, I'm glad you brought up the exhibit, because I think it does so much to kind of share a story that, again, was forgotten, but also kind of also expose that, you know, the story of Captain America isn't just Steve Rogers' perfection.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they like do the whole like, oh, he spent 70 years in the ice, like all that's like hoopla, but like it's to say that the super soldier thing is real.
Yeah.
Like it's not just, oh, Steve was awesome and all this great things. No, because look at someone like Bucky.
Yeah.
Another one created by the wrong, quote unquote, wrong people. You know, look at Isaiah, which was your own government sitting here trying to continue these experiments. Look at the Hulk.
Yeah.
And so I do think, you know, one, it's giving Isaiah the credit that he deserves to have for the role he played in history and for being a super soldier
Yeah.
that was created and that existed and served and did his time in a lot of different ways. But at the same time, I think it finally kind of starts to show, as you pointed out and I pointed out, like the same way history always is so, quite frankly, whitewashed.
Yeah.
It's like, here, this is so amazing. This is awesome. Captain America. And it's like, but then you have a story like Isaiah Bradley
Right.
that nobody knows because it was pushed under the rug, forgotten, done away with. And so was he because nobody wanted to talk about it.
Right.
And so I do think, that in itself, the symbolism and just the powerfulness behind the scenes. But again, it also just shows who Sam is.
Yeah. That he is actively going to right that wrong and doing what he can in his power to make a difference. It has more grand implications sharing Isaiah's story. And I think Sam is obviously aware of those, but I think truly he wanted to make a difference for Isaiah, right? He wanted to help him work through that experience. I mean, Isaiah holds so much anger, and rightfully so. He holds so much anger for what happened to him, but it's hard to move forward if you are holding that. And I think what Sam is trying to do is try to help him work through it, and in doing that by helping acknowledge, Isaiah's, to your point, Isaiah's contributions. I mean, I'm not going to lie, like when I was watching that scene, I shed a tear. I think it's so beautiful watching that happen, and Isaiah's reaction. I mean, the actor does an incredible job in that scene. He's literally shaking, and you see how much it means to him to have someone care enough to share his story, and so that he is able to, really speak about the experiences that he had. So I think it speaks to Sam's kind of ability to understand the wider stories and the wider narratives, but at the same time, really care about people on an individual level. And I think that's also something that is important for a Captain America to do.
I agree. And I think the show, regardless of where these characters went on to and what those stories became or didn't become, I think the show was done so impeccably well
Yes.
across the board. I mean, the two title characters have had so much growth.
Mm-hmm.
The story told behind Sam taking on the mantle is still, to this day, in my opinion, and this includes phases 1 through 3, arguably one of the best and most symbolic stories
Yes.
that I think we've gotten in the MCU. I mean, there are others. I'm not saying it's like the only one, but I do think it's one of the best.
Yes.
The writing is impeccable. And we talked about this throughout the show. Some of this is not, unfortunately, aging well for the US as a whole.
Yeah.
But it is an art form, and just like how we compared it to Daredevil at one point, it's reflecting society for us here.
Yeah, I think it does a really good job of being a reflection on reality and, forcing the audience to really take a beat and just consider and just think and try to empathize with different communities and their, the challenges that they've faced over time. I think it really encourages a lot of thought and reflection, and the best art pieces are meant to do that. And I know the superhero genre gets a lot of heat for being formulaic and too much and all those things and whatever. But at the same time, I want to hold up pieces like this and say, but doesn't this, speak to, first of all, I think all superhero content is great. I mean, for the most part, great. There are definitely some stinkers that Marvel has done, but I think it all has value, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I don't really believe in people saying the whole idea of certain art forms being better than superhero pieces just because they're superhero pieces. But to those people, I also want to hold up something like this and say, okay, this is set in a superhero universe. It's got all the trappings of something that is a superhero story. Yet you tell me this isn't a piece of art that's meant to reflect the society in which we live and get the audience to think about it and reflect on it and what it, what they've experienced or what they have seen or how they can, change their own thinking. I challenge you to tell me that. I think it's a really, really powerful piece, and it continues to be powerful, even 5 years on.
Honestly, I really couldn't say it better myself. I really couldn't.
Well, on that note, it is crazy. We are here. We have reached the end of our MCU specific replay. Maybe someday we'll do all of the movies and things that came pre MCU. Oh, and TV shows if you want to do the Netflix stuff, because we didn't do any of that. So that's always an option, just thinking out loud. But for the MCU specific that, has been billed as MCU when it was coming out, we have caught up to where our show is. Took us a long time, but we
Yeah.
made it, and we're here, and we are moving into some really, really interesting stuff in the back half of this month. So make sure that you are following on your podcast platform of choice. As always, the website and the Buy Me a Coffee, if you want to support the show, are linked in the show notes below.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, also linked in the show notes down below. And now we've ended an era, but we begin our next one as we are beginning Daredevil coverage.
Woo!
Crazy.
I'm excited.
Daredevil Born Again, season 2, next week already, guys. We will be doing our predictions. That feels insane that we are already here. Our second piece of content, new content for the new year. Although I guess we are in mid-March. So
I don't want to talk about that. Let's not.
We're not gonna. But yeah, we'll be doing that. So make sure you guys are getting ready. If you guys are trying to do a rewatch, get on it. You guys got about 2 weeks, a little under 2 weeks. So make sure you guys are doing that if that's what interests you. If not, just get ready for the next 10 weeks because it's going to be crazy and we're excited. But as always, Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.